What's up, heathens? I hope you're having a good day. I'm doing pretty good. Today we're going to be looking at a PragerU video, not the one that you're thinking about, but it does have to do with climate change. So, why don't you put on those anti-fossil fuel hats and let's get it going.
"97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is real." How many times have you heard that statement? Probably hundreds.
I know what you're going to say there, Epstein. Considering that you do work for PragerU and you're an unabashedly Christian university, I guess God is really the only one that can change the climate, am I right? The 97% line does have a few problematic things if you're going to use it in an argument. For one thing, it comes off as an argument from authority. You see, it's not because the climate scientists are climate scientists that makes them correct or anything like that. It's not because a majority of them agree on it. It's because the evidence, a majority of the evidence agrees with each other in suggesting that climate change is man-made and it's gonna fuck us hard.
It may seem like a compelling and scientific argument against fossil fuels, but it's one of the most illogical, unscientific arguments you can make.
It's an argument against fossil fuels? I don't think so. To me, this just shows what kind of people I'm working with here. I mean, you want to paint us as the opposition, us as the bad guys, us as anti-you. By posing climate change activists or climate change proponents on the negative side, you're looking to really set us up to already start thinking negatively about climate change proponents throughout this whole video. My guess is that you're going to be doing this throughout the entire thing. I would say that the activists for climate change, the proponents of climate change, just want new, renewable, clean energy in order to progress our society, rather than, fuck our environment with like a knife-shaped dildo.
To see how, let's use this form of argument for another controversial product, vaccines.
Oh, awesome! So what we're going to do right now is transpose the argument for climate change onto the anti-vaxxer movement. Because who out there doesn't flip a middle finger up at the anti-vaxxer movement?
An anti-vaccine person approaches you and says, 97% of doctors say that the side effects of vaccines are real. What would you say in response?
Well, I would say that yes, there are side effects to vaccines, but they're not bad enough in order to prevent people from getting vaccines. It's not like, hey, pop this Advil and you'll explode an ass cheek. Like, it's not like that is the decision with vaccines. I mean, it's like saying that, yes, the side effects to most medicines is very real.
You'd probably say, yeah, but the benefits far outweigh the side effects. By saying that 97% of doctors agree that vaccine side effects are real, without mentioning any of the benefits of vaccines, the anti-vaccine activist is trying to get you to look at the potential dangers of vaccines out of context.
So, yes, I mean, this entire statement is out of context, but it in no way applies to climate science.
When fossil fuel opponents say 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is real, they are doing the same.
Don't you love how he still paints climate science as being all anti-fossil fuel instead of pro-clean renewable energy? I mean, it's not as black as white as he wants to paint it. I think climate change is very real and it's going to fuck us hard. But yet I still drive 20 miles in my car that uses fossil fuels in order to get there. So he's trying to create a false dichotomy here. You're either pro-fossil fuels or you're anti-climate change. Also, again, I can't stress this enough. It's not because of the scientists that give credence to their work. It's the actual evidence that gives credence to the statement of the 97%.
Yes, using fossil fuels for energy has a side effect, increasing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay, but what about the upside? In the case of fossil fuel, that upside is enormous. The cheap, plentiful, and reliable energy that makes modern life possible, and at a scale no other energy source can match.
Yes, the excessive use of fossil fuels has given rise to higher CO2 levels. No, the benefits to fossil fuels in no way outweighs the negative side effects of climate change. We will lose a lot of land if the temperature raises too much. Currently, the temperature has risen about 0.8 Celsius. Now, I know that might not seem like a lot, but globally, for the Earth to warm 0.8 Celsius is a big deal. I mean, it's causing the polar ice caps to melt and ocean levels to rise. They not only rise because of the polar ice caps, but also the water is expanding. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you heat up water. The molecules get excited and, they bounce around everywhere like little ADHD kids. But what you may not know is that it's actually supposed to be 0.4 degrees Celsius higher. That's right, the current level of CO2 would suggest that we should have a global temperature that is 0.12 above what it was. We are only seeing the first side effects of this warming. I mean, more intense storms and eroding coastlines are just the start. You can bet that Florida is not going to be a state for very much longer if we don't do something about climate change. And just because we haven't discovered a better energy source yet does not mean that fossil fuels are the end-all be-all to energy sources. If we just invest in R&D a little fucking bit, I'm sure that we could come up with something more efficient and cleaner.
So how significant is the side effect? This raises another problem with the statement, 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is real. It tells us nothing about the meaning or magnitude of climate change, whether it's a mild, manageable warming or a runaway, catastrophic warming.
Epstein, I can't believe you're doing this. This is another false dichotomy. No, we're not talking about catastrophic fucking the knowing kind of destruction here. The 0.8 degree rise in temperature does have significant climate consequences. It's a false dichotomy because it's not just mild or fucking batshit insane flame on kind of deal. There are increments in between. Mild can still fuck us over really hard. I mean, saying mild in this case is a lot like saying, hey, I've got a mild rash on my genitals. Should I go and check it out with the doctor? Yes. Yes, you should. Get that shit checked out quick.
This is an example of the fallacy of equivocation, using the same term in different, contradictory ways. If someone were to say 97% of doctors agree that vaccine side effects are real, what exact vaccine side effects do the doctors agree on? That a certain number of babies will get a rash, or that large percentages will get full-blown autism? Precision is key, right?
No, it's not a fallacy of equivocation. An equivocation fallacy would be, for example, if you're having a discussion about LGBT rights or the rights of women, and you come off with, discrimination is good. Discrimination is determining the differences between two things. So yes, we should discriminate. That would be an equivocation fallacy because you're using one definition of discriminate versus the other definition of discriminate. They're vastly different. One is very agnostic as far as what it's talking about. The other one is very much bad. I do agree about precision. You need to be precise when you're making arguments. The more precise that you are, the less likely it is that people are going to misunderstand you and possibly misquote you later. But he still keeps on using this false equivalence with the anti-vaxxers. I mean, you would think that he's trying to paint the climate change proponents as just as crazy, wouldn't you? When we talk about climate change and its devastating effects, we don't need to define devastating. That's pretty well known as to what the fuck we're talking about.
But fossil fuel opponents don't want you to know the precise magnitude of climate change.
Yes, we do. In like every fucking argument we make.
Because if you did, you wouldn't be scared of climate change, you would be scared of losing the benefits of fossil fuels.
Yes, you should be scared of climate change, especially if you live in a coastal city. And again, there are alternatives to fossil fuels. Fossil fuels give us energy. If we can find that energy in the form of the sun, wind, or other renewable and clean energy sources, Why would we be scared of losing fossil fuels? It seems like it has a net zero effect on our lives.
For example, listen to how Secretary of State John Kerry manipulates the 97% of scientists line. 97% of climate scientists have confirmed that climate change is happening and that human activity is responsible, he said in a speech in Indonesia in 2014. Later, in the same speech, he claimed that scientists agree that the world as we know it will change, and it will change dramatically for the worse. 97% of climate scientists never said any such thing.
Okay, well, John Kerry is speaking about the 97% in the colloquial sense. The 97% figure actually talks about actively publishing climate scientists and not the entire scientific community in general. So, no, it doesn't mean that the entire scientific community, 97% of the entire scientific community agrees with these papers. Which, again, it's not the climate scientists, themselves. It's not their degrees. It's not their credentials that give credence to the climate change by humans. It's the fact that their evidence is verifiable, repeatable, and it corroborates each other. Now, the majority of the studies that were studied by like Cook and Richard Toll, most of them actually do cover like if climate change is happening. They don't cover like the link between man and climate change. I mean, he's using this fact in order to cast doubt on the whole man-climate change link.
So what did the 97% actually say? It turns out nothing remotely resembling catastrophic climate change. One of the main studies justifying 97% was done by John Cook, a climate communications fellow for the Global Change Institute in Australia. Here's his own summary of his survey. Cook et al. Found that over 97% of papers surveyed endorsed the view that the Earth is warming up, and human emissions of greenhouse gases are the main cause. Main cause means over 50%. But the vast majority of papers don't say that human beings are the main cause of recent warming. In fact, one analysis showed that less than 2% of papers actually said that.
All right, you know what? I'm going to let a friend handle this one.
Hey heathens, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you John for having me feature on your channel. You're a hero. Anyhow, to get straight to it, there are many flaws with Epstein's reasoning, and I'm sure you've just heard John go to town on many of them. But here's a more subtle but equally critical mistake, or perhaps lie, that Epstein makes. During the 3-minute mark of his video, he challenges John Cook's assertion that human emissions of greenhouse gases are the main cause of climate change, by stating that
main cause means over 50%.
From here, he asserts that less than 2% of papers actually said that humans cause over 50% of climate change, and that therefore, human emissions don't significantly contribute to climate change. However, this line of reasoning is completely flawed, and here's why. A cause does not have to constitute more than 50% to be accurately called the main cause. It just has to constitute more percent than any other cause. For example, just as it's accurate to say that ischemic heart disease is the main cause of death in humans, despite it being below 50%, it's accurate to say that human emissions of greenhouse gases is the main cause of climate change, despite it being below 50%. Now, if I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure if this is a genuine mistake on Epstein's behalf, or if he's deliberately trying to obfuscate the truth. But unfortunately, the result is the same. Mistruths such as this encourage people to dismiss information and facts that are critical to human flourishing. And when it comes to climate change, this is a mistake that we simply can't afford. Anyhow, I'll send you back to John now, heathens. But before I go, thank you kindly for your time. It's not something that I take lightly. Bye bye.
Thank you, Steven. I really appreciate that. Now, everybody, stop, pause right now, go subscribe to him. Why haven't you gone and subscribed? Do it now. Right now.
How did Cook get to 97% then? First, he added papers that explicitly said there was man-made warming, but didn't say how much. Then he added papers that didn't even say there was man-made warming, but he thought it was implied. A scientific researcher has a sacred obligation to accurately report his findings. Cook and researchers like him have failed us.
His reasoning here is so fuckered. As I've said, the study by Cook isn't as whimsical as he likes to make it. Of the 12,000 studies that were analyzed by Cook, 1/3 of them handled the man-made climate change. 1/3 of them handled the man-made climate change link. And of those 4,000 papers that were studied, 97.1% of the publishing scientists, their evidence agreed that man is causing climate change with excessive CO2 emissions. Now, there are people out there that disagree with the methodology by Cook. One of them is Richard Toll. I've mentioned him once before in this video. He disagrees with the 97%, but he only reduces down the congruence of information to 91%. He prefers not to focus on the specific percentages of who agrees and who disagrees, but he does conclude that the science is in, and a majority of climate scientists agree that man is causing climate change.
As have the politicians and media figures who have blindly repeated the 97% claim to support their anti-fossil fuel goals.
They aren't anti-fossil fuel goals. Man, you are really hammering this hard, aren't you? They're goals to prevent more damage being done to our environment. They're goals to protect our environment, to protect us. I mean, currently, right now, we passed the 400 parts per million CO2 level in our atmosphere. That's definitely going to fuck us over. So it's not an anti-fossil fuel thing. It's an anti-getting fucked by Mother Nature thing. It's a, I want my children to survive, and I want to survive kind of thing.
How can we protect ourselves against this kind of manipulation?
Well, if this video indicates the kind of person that you are, I would bet that you would surround yourself with an echo chamber of people that agree with you. And instead of opening your mind to outside opinions, you would rather paint people as the anti-us and just basically have an in-group of people that echoes, echo chamber. They echo what they want to hear, and instead of trying to open up a little bit. Now, I get that some people might throw that in my direction. I understand. I still reject your claim that man isn't causing climate change because, the evidence suggests that it is. You provide solid evidence that topples all of that evidence, then my bet is that you'll win a Nobel Prize. Until that point, though, I'm going to have to go with what the evidence shows us, because science is geared to show us the reality of things, to explain our reality as we see it, as we perceive it, as it's happening. So if you can do that with science, go right ahead.
Whenever someone tells you that scientists agree on something, ask 2 questions. What exactly do they agree on? And how did they prove it? I'm Alex Epstein, author of The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels for Prager University.
Now, what you said here, Epstein, right here at the end, is correct. You should ask those questions. But you see, the key here, and this is what Epstein monumentally fails at, is keeping your biases in check. Looking at information objectively has got to be one of the hardest things that you can do in life. But what you have to do is put them to the side as best as you can. Try to look at the evidence without any preconceived notions about it. If you go into the climate change debate thinking, oh, you're anti-climate change or you're anti-fossil fuels, it's really going to sour the entire conversation. And it's really going to sour you from opening yourself up to ideas that you may not necessarily have encountered before. So don't paint the other party as the anti-me party. Just look at the information that the person gives you in an objective sense. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you, Steven, for helping me out on this video. If you haven't subscribed to Steven already, please go down there below and check him out. Give him a subscribe. He recently had some problems with his channel and he lost all of his subscribers, so he really could use some new subs over there. So go do that, and I will see you guys later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. As for you, Epstein, drop mic. Get fucked!